Welcome back to the channel. In the first part of this series on creating insulated curtains for the rear of our van, we got into taking measurements, what materials we would need, in laying out and cutting out the pattern for the curtain. In this part of the series, we will be getting into cutting out the fabric using that pattern and actually sewing the curtain. So to make sure I minimize the amount of fabric I used, I first took the pattern pieces that I cut out in the previous episode, laid them out on graph paper so I knew the best fit to minimize the amount of fabric I'd be using and minimize the cost for the curtains. So now that we know the best way to lay out the curtains, let's get to cutting them out. The first step in creating the insulated curtain is to attach the zippers to each of the sides and the center panel. I've gone through, used two-sided seam tape to attach the zipper to the fabric so it holds nice and snug. Now I'm going to go through and sew the zipper to the fabric. For the next step, I'm going to be attaching the insulated lining and then sewing at the same time the right sides of the fabric together. So once this is all stitched, I'll be able to flip it open and I'll have a nice clean finished edge with the front and back layers of fabric for the curtain with the insulation sandwiched in the middle. Now that the insulation and the two sides of the fabric were sewn together, I flipped it out so the zipper is out on one side with the clean Cadora fabric showing on each side. And now I'm going to go and top stitch along the end of the zipper to give it a nice clean finish. Yesterday I finished up attaching the zippers, the insulated fabric in the center, and the Cadora on each side of the two side panels of the curtain. Today I'm going to finish these two pieces up by using the gross grain ribbon, 1 inch that I have, to trim out the edges and make a nice clean finish. And as you can see, with the ribbon attached to the end, it creates a nice clean finish for the outside of the curtains. Now that we've gotten each of the sides completely finished, I'm going to begin working on the center insulated panel. The other day we did attach the zippers to each end, so right now I'm taking the right sides of the fabric and stitching each of the sides together. Now that I've sewn the front and the back sides of the center panel together, I put the insulated fabric in the middle and sandwiched them in. Now I'm going to stitch around the top edge of the curtain just so that I can hold the insulated fabric in place before I go to doing quilted lines throughout the whole length of the center panel to give a nice finished look and hold the insulated fabric in place throughout the entire section of the curtain. step to finish up the center of the curtain, I've been quilting lines down the curtain to give it a little more structure and to ensure that the insulated fabric in the center stays in place. So what I've done is across the panel, I equally divided it out, which my case came out to 9 equal 6-inch sections. So I went through, marked each of the sections in lines with white marking chalk, and then sewed over those lines. The white marking chalk with a little bit of water washes right off. It's no longer there afterwards, and it allows me to get a really nice clean straight line. So I've got 2 more lines to sew, which I'm going to do now, which will then complete the center portion of the curtain. And one kind of challenge with something this large is being able to actually handle it and feed it through the sewing machine without it having it pull all over the place and get kind of crooked lines because of the weight of the material and the volume of the material that you're sewing. No real trick for that other than going slow, kind of being neat, rolling up the fabric and just taking your time. And the only tip would be, as you're sewing, if you're going to move or adjust and let go of the fabric, is to make sure the needle is pressed down through the fabric so it doesn't move and shift while you're trying to move your hold on the fabric. And with that, we've finished up all the quilting across the center panel. Next thing I'll do is clean up the chalk marks that are left on the fabric. Then I'll be attaching the side panels that we already finished at the zippers together. And then after that, it'll just be sewing the top panel across the center and 2 side panels to finish it off. And then after that, the only thing remaining will be putting the webbing around the edges to give it a nice clean finish. So there is one additional step that I forgot to mention that I want to do before I attach the sides to the center curtain, and that is to attach the straps and the clips that we'll use to be able to roll the curtain up and hold it at either the bed level or a few at the top if we ever want to fully roll the curtain all the way up to the ceiling height within the van. So to do that, I've cut some short 6-inch sections of the 1-inch webbing. This is the thicker webbing. One of the nice things about this is you don't actually have to finish and fold over or sew the edges. All you have to do is heat them a little bit with a lighter flame, and it actually melts and seals the edges of the webbing. So it gives it a nice kind of clean finish. So what I'm going to do now, these are the pieces that will go on the front. I'm going to just quickly sew the webbing onto the clips. And then for the other side, that side of the clip has the pull through so that we can tighten it, so I won't have to sew it to the other side of the clip. So after this, the next step will be sewing this side of the clip as well as the opposite end to the actual center panel. Now that I have the webbing attached to the clip, the last step is to sew this onto the panel. The first set I'm sewing on is for the portion that'll roll up to the bottom of the bed. So when I took measurements to make the pattern, I went out, measured the height of the bed. So on the center panel I measured up, marked where the height of the bed is, and that's where I'm attaching the straps to each side of the center panel. For the straps that go at the top of the panel, since we haven't sewn on the top edge to finish it yet, I'm just sewing these and stitching them right at the top seam for now. When we sew on the top portion of the curtain and fold it over, that'll give us a nice clean seam with the strap ends where they're sewn on hidden underneath that top panel. And with that, we now have the curtain with the straps to be able to roll it up either halfway or with the straps at the top all the way to the roof of the van. Now that I completed attaching the webbing and the clips to be able to roll up the curtain, one thing I did notice when attempting to roll it up, it is difficult to start rolling the curtain up and to keep kind of consistent tension across the fabric as I'm rolling it up. So I went and looked at, different curtains that are out there today online, and noticed that many of them have an extra component down at the bottom of the curtain with kind of a tube that has a foam center, so that this can be used to help you initiate and the roll up of the curtain and get you a nice kind of even snug roll all the way up. So I picked up, this is just a from Lowe's. It's just a foam insulation that's meant to go around maybe a 1/2 inch plumbing pipe. So I purchased this. I've just cut out some more of the Kedora fabric into sort of a tube that's the length of the base of the curtain. I'm gonna sew a seam down the edge a couple inches down. This will create the nice pocket to insert the foam, and then I will take the top edge of the fabric and sew it onto the base of the curtain to create the finished edge and attach the foam roll to the base of the curtain. And now I'm going to sew the pocket for the foam insulated foam tube. And now with that, I have the insulated foam tube sewn on and to the bottom of the curtain, making a nice clean finish. Other benefit with this tube is it will sit on the floor, so it'll help prevent any drafts from blowing up and underneath the back curtain. Now that we have the middle panel, the two side panels completely assembled, the zippers attached, the final piece will be sewing on the top edge of the curtain, and that's the top edge that'll be mounted up to the ceiling, or to the edge of the ceiling in the van. So to do this, I'm going to start with sewing the Kedora fabric on both sides of the top of the curtain. Then we'll insert the insulated fabric in between, and then do some finishing around the edge using that 1 inch gross grain webbing. Now that we finished sewing, that is a wrap to part 2 of this series on the next and final installment, we will be going over installing the actual insulated curtain into the van, and then I'll also be going through what the actual total costs were for all of the fabric and materials I used to create the curtain. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the final episode of this series, as well as our winter adventures where we'll be using the curtain to keep us toasty warm inside the van.